Oui, voilà. Merci beaucoup. Merci d'être de retour. Alors, so first in English, and then I will begin seriously. We're going to start this roundtable with on the topic of fair economy, and because we had different topics on the past talks regarding ecology and more social areas. And one point I wanted to tackle with you is regarding fair economy. Is it such a thing as a fair economy? Because most of the time economy is about money and is not very interested in fairness unless it brings back something as a return of investment. And I wanted to know on your area, on your respective areas, whether is it okay to make something fair or ecological because you are in a research structure, or maybe you can develop about it, because when you go to the reality of the field, it's way more difficult to produce or to create a fair product. I don't know, maybe who wants to start? So is there such a thing as a fair economy in your area?
It's very difficult, very challenging. We already had discussion at the coffee together, and started to be very heated discussions. And what I would say is, I think people were not thinking that it was possible that open source software would develop and become widespread and etc. While we see it can work, and it is a model which can also be applied for gaming. And the model of the economical model of gaming is also evolving. So that's just to say there is a path which can be found. Now, how could we make sure that we can find a way to put our message, ecological or political, or about educating the next generation with an important topic while being in a competitive context? Difficult to say. I must say I'm hopeful that the young people are not that stupid. Actually, they are smarter than us, if I may say so. And I count very much on their being educated about the possibilities, and on you, for example, to bring to indicate to these young people what is possible and what they can do.
Yeah, regarding your experience, something I was interested in was, you talk a lot about that, not a kid anymore, he's 16 years old, but what about his mother? His mother was very anxious about getting a job, having a future, and in my personal experience, when I said to the parent of student, you know, he may be better at being unemployed with being a game designer, doing his passion, than being an electrician that hates his job and being still unemployed. How do you handle the parents?
Yeah, you're right. Most of the time the parents are the most difficult part to handle.
Shouldn't they play the game as well?
Yes, probably. It's true that in this situation the mother was really not interested in the skills her kid was developing, and all she wanted was for him to have a position. But regarding what you were saying about how can we raise awareness about young people regarding doing something that is meaningful in a competitive world, I think there is something about connecting the person's skills and competencies to the world needs. And the UNO just published like the 16 objective for 2030 about what are the biggest problems in the world that we need to solve by 2030 if we want to have a chance to survive. And now we are trying to develop a game where we present those challenges to the young people, and we say, okay, these are all the crises that the world is encountering. To which one would you like to contribute? And it could be the ecological one, the migration one, or it can be health one. And we present them to people, and then we ask them, which one is the one that touches you the most, and how would you like to contribute to it? And how do you imagine that your job can contribute to this to solving this problem? And I think this is about not choosing a career just because we are good at something, but to have a kind of a purpose or something we know we can contribute to the world through it. I don't know
if I can say something, I want to come back to the definition you gave about fair economy, and I agree with you, Sam, that when we said fair economy, it's another way to think things. But the problem here is that the process is always, or in the majority of time, complex. It means the return of an investment is not direct. You have to follow a long reasoning to find the benefits of such economy. And this idea let me think that serious game, if we come back to the definition of serious games, they are good instruments for sensing, raising awareness, educating, changing thinking and behavior. And I think that it's this is why serious gaming can be a good way to prepare new generations, young people, etc., to this complex view of the world, complex view of the economy, and admit that we don't have to make short-term reasoning and thinking, but thinking more globally and be convinced and think changing our behavior.
And regarding this, Antoine, maybe your experience is interesting as well, because you have to convince a tourism office that they want something that costs less than 10,000 francs, that they know how to assess the feedback, and it must be unique. Yeah, they don't want the same thing that the others. You still need to teach them that may not be the real rule of the game.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, like I have a lot of experiences with them. I've met like actually 10 or 20 like offices, and they all saying the same, that we don't want to pay too much, but we want the best. And the thing is that, is it fair? That this is my question, and to come back to your previous question, is that for me fairness is about everybody is like winning. So if they're winning, I'm losing, I'm not sure it's a fair game. And for me, fair economy is more about like I win, you win, and then we find like a common ground. So for me, I'm always telling them that we can work with students, it's free, but then we don't guarantee any outcome, and that's what you get for the price that you want. So then that's kind of like I'm really practical about this, and it's well received, and then they say yes, so we come back with more money, or we go like Italy, like the same as like Asia kind of aspect of it. So we try with a small one and we test it, and if it goes well, they can actually convince more people to put money in it. So I mean, this is kind of like the fair, like the same thing as open source, as Bruno said before, is that we go small, and then if there are like people interested, it's getting bigger and bigger, and then you can actually go somewhere. This is typically my answer.
Mela, you talked about difficulties in assessing the feedback, and especially in your case with the Chinese culture on the other side of the board, I would say. It's a bit of the same process. You talk to them like a client, or how did you manage your way?
Thank you. Yes, we have a lot of stakeholders in this process. I mean, all these types of LSEs, like Chinese officials, the students, the farmers, which are our primary target group, if you want to say so, but also our scientific cooperation, the Swiss national, the federation and stuff. So it's kind of really a question, of perspective about fairness in economy. Probably, I think it's our responsibility to try to make it as fair as possible. Of course, open source is a good point. If the Chinese farmers basically think it's very fair, it's a different question, of course. I mean, it's kind of the white missionary aspect. We come and think we have a solution for you. That's very problematic, of course, but in a way, if the money is there, we want to try to make something as meaningful as possible. So it's a matter of perspective, really.
But you said it was well received in the end.
Yes, absolutely, yes, and of course we connected it also to Chinese play culture. There's a big cultural acceptance of playing cards in communities. Also in Hong Kong, you see a lot of people on the street playing card games together. So it's something that is well established, is well received. You don't have to make a big persuasive for their activities. So that's already a good junction.
Okay, thank you. Something we just went through a bit quickly was it's the fact that we talked about fairness, but it's always a question of education. In your both case, exactly for the same in tourism, there is still a question of learning something, and maybe an unfair question from my side that doesn't know exactly how school works, but don't you think that sometimes your projects are more for your student than for the final target? And how do you manage that? You're more into educating your students, and then when they go to the real fields, they arrive in another place, another world, or is that message is going through and they take it with them into their future career?
No, it's not. For me, I think that I don't agree with that. The fact that I'm teaching my students and not the end users, and that's actually what I'm trying to do in my own research, in my own kind of education, is that I'm trying to answer a need from the end user, and that this is why I made this study, is that to make sure, because I mean my students have a lot of idea how to actually to actually make visitor more engaged, but then when they go to reality, they say, oh, I tried it, it failed. And for me, like, to teach them that even though they think that's a really good idea, they might have like a really good grade at school, it might not work in the real environment, and they will be shut down by prices, they will be shut down by resources. So I mean, for me, I'm trying to actually teach them this early on, and this is what we as researchers face every day, is that we get a lot of no and a lot of negative answer, and we have to navigate through that.
Maybe Yassine, with your project in Geneva, there is 3 escape room. That
one I know are 3, yeah.
Okay, and they all could be potential clients, or?
Yeah, we discussed that before the session, and I said that there is a mitigated answers, because for these people, the scenario of playing at home is not very attractive for them. So the idea is to, and this is why I'm always saying that if we have to think fair or to think benefits, we have to go a little bit higher and think the process more generally. For me, I think that if we initiate people at home to use escape room, they will come back to the real escape room, because the sensation, the feeling is not the same. And it can be a kind of popularization of the phenomena. So these people have to think not for the short time. Perhaps we can lose few people at the beginning, but they can gain 10 times after some years. And the problem is always that, is to convince people that sometimes you have to think long term, and we know that for the industry it's always, I think, short-term strategies, and we have to think about tomorrow, and we have to have the shortest and the nearest return of our investment, etc. And this is very difficult for us as researchers to convince people to invest for the good of the humanity or for our child or for them, but in 20 years. It's not very easy.
Well, but I will answer as a scientist myself, and you too. That's for us to give better measurements. So that's why our studies should involve controls and measurements, and not only measurements of our skills, but measurement on how much they retain of the information we transfer, or how much, I don't know, they enjoyed, if it's about a game, etc. So I think that's everybody in the world of improving these systems should also think about improving their own practice in better quantifying.
And I must say this roundtable is a bit special to me, because on over 4 people, there is 3 that have feedback assessment, and that's something we are not used to. You mentioned it, and you mentioned it. So it seems that it's becoming something, a trend, not a trend, a real. It's becoming a key to success to have assessment. Is it always the case? On your experience?
Yes, we do interviews and assessments, participatory observation, and of course, it depends if you have like a game that you exhibit an exhibition, and then maybe you have a digital interview on an iPad, or just various ways to make assessments. But it's just one part in the game development cycle. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we may have a few public questions. Does the audience want to know anything? Yes, there is.
So I wanted to ask whether it is like a product model that you want to sell, or a new way of helping kids find what they want to do in the future, or another subject you want to promote or make awareness for. What is your way of communicating that to like stakeholders and people around, for it to become like something that is global? Because on one hand, the going to China where the problem is present is very much there, and that's a great way to do it. How would you do it otherwise?
Thank you for your question. I had the opportunity to participate in an international conference, and I met some people, for example, from Korea, who were really interested, because they told me this is a real problem for us, problematic gaming behavior, and how to connect these people with a career. And so this is one way, and I think that in conferences the message is well handled, I think. And also we submitted a paper with a colleague of mine on the different interventions we can do with video game player in order to promote meaningful career. So this is the way, I mean, at the international level we are trying to promote this kind of intervention. And more locally, we also, I had the opportunity to participate in training for career counselor. So I teach class, and there is I will say raising interest from career counselor for this concern. So this is, but if you have other idea, I will be very interested to discuss with you.
I think it's really interesting, your project, what you said, and I think in a way it's also a little bit sarcastic that I feel a little for this young man who had to be cured, at least from his mother's perspective, from his video game obsession by means of video games.
20 hours a day is not that bad.
Yeah.
I know some people around here.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's really important to like externalize and on a meta level analyze the skills, and that you are simulating and exercising every day. So I think that's really, really smart to look at it from a very close point of view. But I think it's perfectly okay to be a game designer. Yeah.
There is just not many opportunity when you just finish code to become a game designer. So this is it.
Yeah. But when you look at a conference like this, you see, oh, there's actually a lot of opportunities for game designers to use their skills and change the world. Maybe I really think parents should play more, not children less, but parents more.
Another question? So just one from me to the audience. Who's playing games? There's still some people that are missing something. Well, so thank you, and much the best of luck for your project. We hope to see you here again next year with the other assessment, because we need them to convince everybody to invest in this field. Thank you so much, and
thank you.
Thank you.
We will go straight away with the following of the program. Thank you.